Okay, guys, we're going to talk about some very interesting stuff today. Stuff that I was holding on for a long time. A lot of this information, now it's going to kind of start to leak. You'll have different little puzzles. I was talking about Russian underground base. I've been hinting at Baron Trump, talking about Tesla, talking about underground tunnels over in Germany, Wiesbaden, where the United States military base is at. Then the UFOs that were taken in the early 1900s, Italy. Then the UFOs that was taken from Germany under OSS. This was Alan Dulles, who eventually became the CIA director. So then he eventually is going to have Patton killed, set up. And Patton knew about all of this stuff that was being moved from Germany after the war, moved over to the United States. So as you know, that 17 gave one of the biggest drops that talk about Roswell, saying that this is the, it's the highest classified operations. It's the highest classified thing that the government is hiding. So this is all connected. And we're going to connect this of what the rapture kind of is, and then to technology, and how there's a huge, gigantic puzzle, then how it's all connected over to Mount Hayes, connected to super intelligence, extraterrestrials. So get your tinfoil hats on, everyone. So as you know that people talk about the rapture from the Bible. Anyways, the idea is that before the tribulation, before the end of the world, there's, I think, like 7 years of chaos, from wars to plagues to natural disaster, the rise of the Antichrist. All of this stuff happens. And before that happens, Jesus, God, comes down and he saves only the Christians, and then all the Christians that die, he raises them also from the dead, and he takes them into heaven. So those are different timelines. The timeline of us being alive on earth, this timeline that we're on. Now they jump into a different timeline, that isn't on earth. It's a different place, a different space, a different time, a different dimension. So those are the kind of things to understand. So as you know, over in TikTok, it was trending over the weekend that the rapture was going to happen during September 20, 21, 22, 23. So people were waiting for that again. And there was millions and millions and millions of people watching all of this information coming out, all these different videos. And everybody was kind of expecting the rapture. People were actually preparing for it, saying goodbye. So the rapture, we're talking about this because we're going to be jumping around a lot. And the reason why it's a hard conversation is because we're talking also about death, what happens when you die. As a spiritualist, people who believe in the spirit, people who believe in God, who believe in their own deities, people have their own traditions, religions, and having to do with all of these different traditions and religions. What's unique about being spiritual is that the faith, the religion, the aspect of it that talks about when you die, there is no death. The spirit comes out and goes into different dimensions. The same thing, you're no longer here. Your body jumps into a different timeline. It jumps into a different space. It jumps into a different place that isn't here, but things are moving forward. Moving forward, which means kind of time again, that things are kind of in its own place. So having to do with this, that people die and their spirit rises, in a way that's kind of its own rapture. It has nothing to do with Christianity. It has nothing to do with the Bible. It's the Native American ways also afterwards, is the happy hunting ground, going back to the Spirit of God. Even in my own culture, we have that, where the Spirit reunites with God, that energy source of where it's at, where all things are possible. Now, having to do with all of this, we're going to come back to all of this. That's why I'm telling you, we're going to jump around on this stuff. So the rapture was trending. You're kind of understanding what the raptures are, if you don't understand it already. Now we're going to talk about a very important person. We're going to talk about Tesla. As you know, Tesla was on the Wardenclyffe Towers. He was working on projects. The way that Tesla came into the United States, Tesla came in to work with Thomas Edison, this very famous inventor. Thomas Edison was way up there, let's just say, creating a lot of things that we still use today. So Tesla comes directly into the United States and goes to work for someone that's really powerful, someone that's moving a lot of technology, new technology that's being developed, and Tesla immediately gets in on that. And then eventually Tesla's going to be working with the biggest banking system back then. He's going to be working with JP Morgan. They're going to fund him. He's going to be working over at Wardenclyffe by New York City on the island. Then he's going to be working on this project where he's supposed to be creating electricity, a new form of electricity that JP Morgan can, make a lot of money on. But things don't work out. A lot of the funding disappears. Eventually, JP Morgan, Tesla go different ways. But in that time, what Tesla was really working on behind the scenes, that people probably don't really know about, is that Tesla was working on a new world wireless system. Now, some of the information's out there when you talk about the world wireless system, but at the same side, the part that's classified through the military operations, even back then, the United States, they were classifying a lot of stuff that they didn't want this to come out. What he was working on in the early 1900s, Tesla, because he's going to open up some wormholes with what he's working over on these, with all of this infinite energy that he was creating, these powerful electric energy that was opening up wormholes. Now, the military is going to classify a lot of these projects. Later, they're going to use this, this Tesla energy is going to be connected to a lot of other stuff that's going to happen over at the Montauk Project. Those operations is going to be connected to the U.S. Navy classifying a lot of projects that's from the Montauk Project, that's connected to time travel, connected to jumping timelines. It's connected even to creating monsters. When you saw that, people saw that video, the Miami video, what happened was there was a big alien that was walking over in Miami, and everybody said they saw this, and it was really real. Police saw this, a lot of people. Now, I was telling you, they have technology from the Montauk projects. They created technology with enough energy that they could create a monster. They could create something that's tangible, that you can actually see, that can move, that can hit stuff. Not only monsters were they creating, but they could simulate human beings. So they could simulate animals, they could simulate human beings, they could simulate monsters, they could simulate UFOs, but they were tangible. They weren't simulations. They were actually things that was actually physical that you could touch, and they could last for long moments. Then the military operation took the projects from Montauk projects, and then they moved over to different places. And then that's where they took a lot of the operations from Montauk. They took that all the way up to Five Finger Lakes. This is where the old military base is. It's underground. It's huge. It's gigantic. But underneath that, I told you there's a line that goes all the way down to Camp David. So underneath Camp David is also a huge, gigantic base, these operations. But anyways, that's basically a little bit about Tesla. When Tesla came in the 1800s, in the late 1800s, by the early 1900s, he was working with these huge machines generating a lot of energy. And he opened up a wormhole. And so now we're going to jump over to what was happening in the late 1800s. Abraham Lincoln. You know, Abraham Lincoln, he got assassinated. You know that part of the story. He was killed inside the theater. Now, Abraham Lincoln, like I said, behind the scenes, Abraham Lincoln is one who created the Secret Service, and a lot of the Secret Service operations after Lincoln creates them is going to be connected to operations later behind JFK, the Secret Service. A lot of people are going to call him the Q. There's going to call him Q. These operations later on when JFK Jr., when he gets killed, JFK Jr., you know, he died. He died in an airplane. He died somewhere over the ocean. They never found the body, but he was always talking about his Q team, his Secret Service that was protecting him, the special forces that was protecting him. And his father knew about all the satanic rituals, all these different operations that was happening around the world. We're talking about JFK. JFK knew about hidden technology that they were hiding. JFK was in communication with the Russian president, and they were actually communicating. And they also had spies that was running behind them. They had these huge, gigantic back channels in between them. So that's a whole different story, because United States military is going to have operations over in Russia, you know, around about 1960s, 1970s, and they're going to be playing with the radar systems. They're going to be playing with some UAPs and messing around with the Russian military. The United States is going to be practicing on that, and Russia's not going to like it. So some of that is a little bit over to why Russia brought in some missiles over into Cuba, which actually created a standoff with the United States. But there was other things that I explained, the real reason why JFK was assassinated, connected to Jesuits, connected to the drug trade. You know what was happening with Operation Gladio, the drug trade that was being created, the financial system inside of Vietnam, all the money that was going to Hong Kong. Now, so we're on the subject of talking about JFK. We're talking about how JFK got his people, the Secret Service, that were kind of running secret operations, that those secret operations came from Abraham Lincoln. So we're going back to the story of Abraham Lincoln, the Secret Service, and I just gave you some extra information. So Abraham Lincoln, in his time, he sent a very important person into Germany. And this person that he sent into Germany, he sent them over to, back then it was called the Kingdom of Hanover, or else the Hanover Kingdom. It was inside of Germany. And this person that he sent over there for foreign relations, he was a diplomat. And this happened in 1862. And this very important person, his name is Ingersoll Lockwood. You know where I'm going with this story now? So Ingersoll Lockwood was an American lawyer. He was a diplomat. He was a writer. And he was appointed as counsel to the Kingdom of Hanover by Abraham Lincoln, 1862. His father was Monsoon Lockwood, who was a brigadier general in the New York State Militia. The reason why this name, if you're not familiar with Ingersoll Lockwood, he's the person that's going to write the books on Baron Trump and all of these different adventures in the late 1800s, where he's going to talk about this young kid, Baron Trump, that's going through these secret tunnels, and then he goes to Russia. He's jumping different timelines, and then the person who takes care of him, he's called the Don. It should be noted here that Ingersoll Lockwood, his books, including The Last President, the riots break out in front of where the current Trump Towers is at over in New York City. There's also a character inside the book that's name is Pence, and he turns, he turns against the president. That's what actually really happened in real life, about the vice president. So there's a lot of similarities about riots going on over the election, and it's on the same place where the Trump Towers is at. So there's a lot of similarities through Ingersoll's books, including Baron Trump, all these different names, even the Don. So there's a lot of similarities to almost like a civil war breaking out inside of the book, because they're trying to overthrow the government and all of these things. But Baron Trump goes on these different adventures inside of these different underground tunnels, and he ends up over in Russia. Now, we'll just call him Mr. Lockwood, Ingersoll Lockwood. 1862, he's sent over to Germany, to Hanover. If you've been to Germany, this is Hanover, just a little ways down, it's just a short drive. Right there is Wiesbaden. This is just a little ways from Frankfurt. It's actually the same place to me. Frankfurt is just right next to us, like this, outside the suburbs. So it's just a small drive. Underneath Wiesbaden, there's a tunnel that goes all the way over to Hanover, some old tunnels. Then there's old tunnels that go from Hanover towards Berlin, and then it goes all the way into Poland, and then it goes all the way across into Ukraine, and then it goes all the way from Ukraine. I told you there's a base underneath that river. There's a huge base underneath that river, and then it goes all the way into Russia. There's a lot of strange coincidences to all these different stories being put together. Now, Mr. Lockwood, he's going to go underneath the base at Wiesbaden. Now, when we talk about Wiesbaden, I told you the story of the Guardians from the old wars, late 1500s, early 1600s, the religious wars that were happening. And there were different tribes, different shields of family. And there was a family called the Drumpf, the Drumpf family, the Drumpf shield. Now, they had like a secret society. All of these societies, nobody really knows them. They have a secret shield, a secret family crest, a secret family society. They're taking care of this region down in southwest Germany, where the Wiesbaden location's at. Under there is all ritual grounds underneath the ground, and underneath this ritual site, there's old relics, and those old relics is connected to like a UFO base that's underground. Advanced civilizations. When we talk about advanced civilizations, I keep telling you that Arizona, even California, all the way up to Nevada, the oceans were once so high that they reach into Arizona, where you see all those red rocks. You see Monument Valley, you see Sedona, Arizona, and the waters reached all the way up to those rocks so far. And there was advanced civilizations a long time ago that came to Earth, and they were using the water. That had to do something with some kind of gold that existed on Earth a long time ago that they came for. And they were changing that into monoatomic gold. They were infusing that gold into themselves. They were putting it into their body, and their mind was running at 100% capacity. So in this way, certain alien races, they came to Earth a long time ago, and they were taking the gold out from the Earth, from the waters, from the oceans. They were creating monoatomic gold for different things, for technology, advanced technology. As you know, that the pyramids, it's the same thing that they were using monoatomic gold to use these pyramids to generate electricity, to generate things that we don't know about. They could have been generating simulations. They could have been moving technology. The same things, the old stories, these old stories of the Ark of the Covenant. What was inside of there was monoatomic gold. And that was the same size that fit over inside the pyramids also. And that's what the Templars Knights were actually doing, was they were studying a lot of this advanced technology that was connected to monoatomic gold, different energies. There's a huge, gigantic story behind the Templars Knights. The bad side, the good side, the divisions later. The Roman Empire is going to go kill a lot of them. So you can kind of research a little bit of that story. So, like I said, the story is going to jump around. So, there's advanced civilizations for a long time, whether you're at Groom Lake, Area 51, when the oceans were there, inside of Germany, inside of Europe was the same thing a long time ago. So, there's an underground base, a big one over in Frankfurt, over in Wiesbaden underneath. Now, the U.S. military controls that. And like I said, in World War II, after it was done, Alan Dulles from OSS, which is the CIA later, they take out parts of the spacecraft and they bring it over to the United States, to the United Air Force Base. That's their Eglin Air Force Base. Then they move some of that technology all the way north, and then it heads over into what people are calling Huntsville, Tennessee, which is just exactly north, like a line. Then it goes up to Tennessee. So those are the underground lines. But anyways, Mr. Lockwood, he arrives in Germany. Then he goes over to Wiesbaden. And this is in the late 1800s, like I said. Lincoln sends him intentionally, Abraham Lincoln. When he gets to this area of Frankfurt, they take him underneath to look at this facility, to look at all of these ancient relics, this old technology. Now, what's going to happen is, like psionic operations, the technology is going to recognize him. His DNA, it's going to know who he is, and the technology turns on. So when that technology turns on, it creates a wormhole. And he feels it when that wormhole pulls you. It's beautiful. You can actually feel the trust. You can actually feel divine love, a divine energy that pulls you forward. And your body, everything recognizes it. So Ingersoll Lockwood goes into the wormhole. And when he goes through it, he ends up over in Russia. So underneath Russia is a huge, gigantic underground base that's over in Russia. And he ends up over in Russia. Now, when he ends up over in Russia, I mind you that this is in 1862, 1863. He ends up over in Russia. When he ends up over in Russia, this is the chatter inside of intelligence, like classified stuff that's from Russia. Say that. Okay, he ends up over in Russia, Ingersoll Lockwood. When he ends up in Russia, he meets somebody very important. And guess who that person that he meets over in Russia, the underground base? he meets Tesla. He created a wormhole. When he went through that wormhole that took him in, he went through different timelines, different places. And in one of the timelines of where Tesla went to, he went over to Russia underneath the underground base. Now, underneath that underground base, there's Nordic aliens. These Nordic aliens tell him about Mount Hayes. Underneath the mountain, there's a huge, gigantic Nordic aliens. There's different kind of giants, aliens that are deep underneath the ground. And they tell him that this is where we come from. And they know about all the different timelines of what's happening. Humanity, some humanities, they get destroyed. Some humanities, there's different timelines of aliens controlling everything. There's different timelines of things that are dark with satanic operation, satanic energies. So the Nordics are talking with Tesla and telling him, how to change the timeline, how to jump different timelines. People say that these Nordic aliens, they come from different star systems. Some people call them the Palladians. So Ingersoll Lockwood ends up at this underground Russian base. And at the same time, later on, when you hear the adventures of Baron Trump, that he's going to be traveling through the underground into Russia. There's that connection that's there. So Ingersoll Lockwood meets Tesla from the future. Tesla jumped and he's here. Ingersoll Lockwood meets him here. And Tesla gives him specific instructions. He says, I need you to go make contact with my family. I'm still just a young boy there. You really need to go make contact with my mom, my family, and you have to let them know that I have to go to the United States to work with Thomas Edison. You have to make this path, and you have to tell the President of the United States, you have to tell Abraham Lincoln, you have to tell people that's going to help create the Secret Service. You have to bring me into the United States. This has to happen because I'm changing the timelines of all the events in history of what's going to happen. Ingersoll Lockwood send associates from the government people. They go over to see Tesla inside of Austria, his family. And they say, okay, we're going to pay for everything. But Tesla has to come into the United States when he becomes older. He's going to work with very advanced technology that's being created. He's going to work with very powerful people, and this has to happen. So whatever evidence that they gave the family, they allowed it to happen. So a few years later, Tesla, when he grows up, and then Tesla's going to end up coming into the United States. And that time is going to happen around 1884 that Tesla's going to come into the United States. 20 years later, when he's like 26, he's going to work with Edison. He's going to create all of this stuff, create Tesla Energy, Wardenclyffe Towers, the wormholes. So Tesla was jumping timelines. Now, do you remember I was telling you when Tesla died, there's a lot of stuff that was classified. The FBI took some stuff. The military intelligence was already getting stuff, copying all the stuff. Tesla had already sent stuff to, to agents that came from Russia. Tesla sent stuff to the military inside the United States. There's so much different operations connected to intelligence, connected to military, connected to Tesla, connected to super advanced technology, connected to wormholes that Tesla was going through. This is the thing that people can't get in their heads. Tesla's creating infinite energy, Tesla energy. Tesla's moving through these different quantum fields of the spirit of a powerful intelligence. The spirit of how, we can time travel. When I say that, I mean like we come from different dimensions to be born here. People believe in reincarnation. People believe after death, the spirit moves into a different timeline. You go into a different space where time is moving forward in a different dimension, different directions. We are all time travelers in a way. This is what we are. This is what we have done as spirits. The spirit is infinite. People always say that God is one. The sacred spirit is one. That means almost like you can be in almost all different dimensions. You can move around and everything's almost connected also at the same time. So that's just to say that we are time travelers from before birth of how we come into this life, after birth, after death of how we jump into different dimensions, and then what people want to experience after that. If you want to perhaps go back to a different time and age of where you want to live, what you want to do, see dinosaurs, whatever, anything is possible through the power of creation, through the power of God, who's creating the infinite universe that keeps on being created. And Tesla created a technology that he could move through to mimic the same things, have those same experiences, going into those same wormholes and going through different dimensions. So that's how all of these stories are interconnected. Now the thing that's going to kind of trip out everybody about this stuff is Snowden. Why did Snowden go to Russia? They had this whole charade, like, we're looking for Edward Snowden, we can't find him. Everybody was looking for him in the United States, looking for him over in Europe, looking for him in Malaysia, looking for him here. Nobody knew where he was, but he was traveling with his passport. Every place he was going, he was checking in. Even back then, they had the technology to track you. Edward Snowden told you they have the technology to track you. He didn't give you all the information, but he told you they're tracking you on almost everything that you have, and the government is doing this illegally. He just gave you the stuff from prison, from Facebook, social media, to tracking all your phone calls, your computers. But they had more advanced technology of tracking humans even back then. So why was it so hard for the United States to try to look for Edward Snowden while he was at an airport checking in, while he was with his ID, his passport that he had, and then when he was over inside of all places to be, Edward Snowden is over in Hong Kong, when he's in China, and Hong Kong is the biggest base for all the big technology back then. That was the biggest hub for the Jesuits, for the CIA, the Rothschilds. They were moving so much financial systems of a huge, gigantic money laundering operations that was going there. And they had super technology that they were already messing with that predates what Palantir could do. China was already using a lot of those systems, like I've been telling you, or the stuff that you know about social credit score, the social system that they have there where they track everybody. They had already instituted a lot of these projects, but yet nobody can find Snowden. Nobody could find Snowden. Then all of a sudden, Snowden's inside of a hotel, and then you have people that, that came from the newspapers from over in the UK, from The Guardian, and they're being with him. But still, the military couldn't track it. They couldn't find anything. They couldn't find all of these things. And it's just the story that you see, whether you're watching Netflix or you're watching the movie Snowden, that's absolutely fake. That's just, a lot of that is completely fake. Snowden had more knowledge than humans can think about the operations that was happening over in Hawaii, psionic operations that was happening with the NSA military and what they were doing underneath Hawaii. There's a bunch of different projects, and we'll get into that eventually. I've been telling you about Mount Hayes, all the way down to Mount Shasta, all the way down to Hawaii, how this living light system that came through at the end of 2011 into 2012, this living plasma light, living computer, this thing can separate, it can move around, it does so much stuff, but it was brought into the US and then it was eventually moved to Hawaii, and those are the operations of 17. Those are the operations of a living computer system from a different dimension. When you think about computers, most humans just think about, this technology that we have, computers. But this is way more advanced, that can shapeshift, that can move around, that is living, has its own intelligence. It's a spirit. It's its own entity, So that 17 living light that went there, and they were working with that. Admiral Rogers, the white hats were working with technology. That's when they began to reverse everything inside the world through those technology of the 17 operations, infiltrating all the deep state systems around the world. Now Snowden is going to magically, saying it's magic, he's going to get to Russia. Even when he's over in China, from Hong Kong, he's flying to Russia. Even from there on, they couldn't even block his passport. The United States couldn't do it. And somebody accidentally misspelled his name, and they misspelled it, so they couldn't arrest him. They couldn't stop the flight. People would have shot down that airplane. Even they didn't have to shoot it down. United States jets could have helped land it. There are so much different operations that's connected to satellite system, controlling airplanes remotely, remote control airplanes. There is so much technology to capture Snowden, even to bring down that airplane, even to having agents, at the airports. It's nonsense. But Snowden ended up in Russia. Now the real wires I've been telling you for a long time is he was intentionally placed in Russia because that's what Putin wanted. Because Putin knew that over in Hawaii, they had this plasma energy technology that could shape shift, that could create different living computer systems. It could multiply itself. And these are connected over to the MH370 operations of how that plane disappeared, and all of those people that were there, all of those different engineers that had that technology, these superconductors, these powerful conductors that can make things disappear, make even people disappear, make them reappear in different locations. It's a huge technology when you talk about these superconductors that they were creating in the United States, and these engineers, those operations of those engineers carrying those superconductors that disappeared, that actually ended up over in Russia. That was a deal that was made in order to create the world storm operations. Putin said, okay, if you want to do the real storm operations, I have to have assurance that you're not just going to destroy us. You're not just going to kill us with all of this technology. If you really want to work together inside of the storm operations, I want one of your smartest persons that I know about. I know you have Edward Snowden. I know that he knows almost all the presidents of the world. He's been given classified information to the top leaders. He's talking about technology. Snowden's story is much, much bigger, connected to psionic operations, underground military bases, advanced UAP technology. And Putin knew about Snowden. And he said, I want Snowden here, and then I want some of that technology from the US, and I want Snowden to look underground of the operations that we have here underneath Russia. We want him to look at this base, the technology. We need to understand this. This is the only way that we're going to do the storm operations with you. And this was the agreement behind the scenes, behind the United States White Hats, the military, with Putin to jump on board. And those operations happened in 2 years. And so by 2014, Snowden is over in Russia. He gets there. 2 years later, the storm operations began in the United States. At the last 45 minutes of the election, Donald Trump started winning. The last 45 minutes, the United States military was moving the operation using super AI systems to manipulate all the voting. Yes, it was stolen election when Trump was placed in, but stolen election had always been going on. There was so much manipulation of the deep state controlling both parties, the Republican, the Democrats. intentionally creating wars between them so that people would be upset, angry. And it was control out of chaos. But for the first time, the military used technology to put someone into power, Trump. Now Trump is going to take over all of this energy, all of this force that's inside of, what people call the swamp, where the United States was so filthy, so dirty with all of this deep state cabal operations. Trump's going to get this military power, this force, and they're going to protect them. They're going to put them in place. And then he's going to start exposing all the operations from the FBI to the CIA to the coup to just everything that you're watching, because they knew that they were going to use the pandemic. They knew they were going to create the Russian war. They knew that the CIA operations globalists wanted to capture Russia. You had a lot of generals, even colonels talking about this. Even Colonel McGregor talked about what he knows, how these operations were from the United States through the neocons to attack Russia and to use Ukraine as the place of operations. So all of these were planned. Now Trump, the military, is on counter everything. Now those countering operations is what people call game theory operations. And those operations is connected to the pandemic, letting the bad people initiate the pandemic. That way the crime is committed. Now everything goes into the world records and all the different government agencies that this happened. Now they're going to start exposing everything. Now you're actually watching all of this exposure happen as Trump's going to expose the vaccines that's happening. Underneath Trump, RFK is happening. There's exposure to the pandemic still going to keep on growing to the globalist operations. Trump's exposing the United Nations, for invasion into the United States. He's talking about the globalist operations. So much stuff is happening that you see, exposing the drug cartels, exposing Antifa, exposing the world operations, exposing everything of the financial fraud system, everything through the world. So these military operations that you saw from the 17 light system, I'm kind of explaining everything of how that went to Hawaii and where Snowden was at and why Snowden went to Russia. Now, here's the kicker of this story. Nikola Tesla jumping timelines to fix the world, getting certain information going underneath Russia. Nikola Tesla, like I said, I already wrote this before that. Nikola Tesla left a ghost when he died. He left a ghost. The reason why I was saying that in one of my past videos, because I knew I was going to talk about this. It has to do with almost the rapture. It almost has to do with jumping timelines. It does have to do with jumping timelines. It has to do with a very spiritual, sacred energy of almost angelic energy of creation, moving all of this infinite energy, plasma energy in all the cells and activating, the spirit to go into different timelines, just like how you're born, what happens after death. Tesla had this technology to mimic that, to go into wormholes. In a way, Tesla defeated death. In a way, Tesla had the power to change his face, to change his body, to jump into different timelines. He didn't have to look the same. This is what it is with advanced super technology. So here's the kicker. Edward Snowden, that's actually Nikola Tesla. That's what it's going to be like. What? They're the same person in one. All of these operations from the adventures of Baron Trump, that was created through Inglewood, that was actually, how he was positioned by Abraham Lincoln, from people who were going to create the Secret Service. These people that was creating the Secret Service is going to be connected over to the Templars Knights. the white hats behind the scenes. The Templars Knights, eventually they were against each other. A lot of them were killed. A lot of them, they went against each other. They turned into Jesuits. They turned into different parts of different, the Knights of Malta. They separated into different divisions. But some of the white hats escaped of the real Templars Knights. They escaped all the way far up into Norway, up into Sweden, up into Ireland. The UK came into the United States, and they knew about infinite energy. They knew about monatomic gold. They knew about certain relics, certain things that were buried inside of Europe. What was really underneath, what's over in Giza, underneath the temples, what was underneath this place that was over in the Middle East, that's connected to where all of these old boxes of the Ark of the Covenant was hidden. There's a lot of these old biblical events connected to events that's over inside of the Middle East, over in Egypt, that's connected over to Germany, connected to the Vatican. A lot of people get confused through the Bible when you talk about religion, when you talk about Christianity, when you talk about people who believe in the Bible. But you have to remember there's over 20,000 different denominations of Christianity that is fighting within themselves. Who is right, who is wrong. Then you have all these scholars out there that say, I've read all the books, I went everywhere, and I actually went to that country and I studied their books. I went into the libraries. I know how to transcribe all the languages. I'm super educated. I know everything in this field. You have professionals out there saying that. Then when we talk about stuff that was hidden from the Bible, from the Council of Nicaea, people say, I know what that is, the Council of Nicaea. That's not what it really was. No. The stuff that you only know about, stuff like the Council of Nicaea, those are the stuff on the top layers. Behind the scenes, there are so many secret societies inside of Rome, inside of the Vatican, dating all the way back to the beginning. The people who created the Council of Nicaea, they were hiding a lot of stuff inside of secret meetings, inside of secret gatherings, the stuff that wasn't put into the books to say, okay, this is the Council of Nicaea. We're going to let everybody know that this is what we talked about. Even today, when, the government hides everything inside of intelligent agencies throughout the world. Even the white hats are hiding secret operations. The black hats are hiding secret stuff. Even in the age of technology, even this age where information can move, nobody knows this stuff. Nobody knows what's really happening. Nobody knows these things, even in this time. So why do people really believe when these scholars, when they say, I know what happened at the Council of Nicaea, I know that, I know everything that happened back then in the year 100, in the year 60, the year 55, in the year 200. I know what happened because I read the books, because I study it. They don't really know, and they don't really know what they're talking about when you're talking about a lot of technology, advanced operations, when you're talking about a lot of secret societies that was hiding the real information behind the scenes. So that's just to let you know that a lot of the Bible has been bended. A lot of stuff is missing from the Bible. It's hidden underneath, the Vatican. So we're in this moment of so much stuff that's going to keep on evolving slowly. The technology that's going to come out, the way everything is going, the exposure of the cartels, the world money laundering system, the stolen elections, the military is coming out. Same time you're hearing about UFO, aliens, UAPs, people even, for decades, even from inside the government, they were talking about aliens working with the United States. There are hybrids inside of intelligent agencies. So there's just so much stuff that's huge, that's massive. And I just want to bring you the story of Baron Trump. And I want to bring you the story of, what's underneath Mount Hayes and how these underlying underlying lines are connected from Mount Hayes all the way to Germany. And I keep telling you about the spider web, these different portals around the world, and how this is all connected to the living plasma inside the earth, that powerful core of powerful, magnificent, infinite energy, and how that created a black shell to encapsulate that energy so it doesn't just blow up, explode. You have this black rock, that's covering that infinite energy. But that black rock is also taking a lot of energy into it, like being super magnetized. It's just, there's so much to say about this black rock. And then you have the inner core, the outer core, then you have the mantle, the crust of the earth. And that's why people talk about Stargate in different movies, and you always see that black rock, that ring. And I was explaining what that black rock really is, and the reason why the corporation BlackRock, the biggest corporation in the world that is controlling a lot of assets, moving a lot of money throughout the whole world, controlling industries. The reason why they named it BlackRock, because it's connected over to what they know, the highest heads, from the Illuminati to the Freemasons to these secret societies of the occults. They know about this black rock and how they use this black rock to put water on it, and then you can create these different dimensions and wormholes. And that's why I was telling you, this is what Trump is going after, are these little black rocks underneath the ocean. People are fighting for this, and people want to have rights, but Trump is just like, you know what, we're just going to go get it. While country says, no, we need to make an agreement over these little black rocks, because those black rocks can create electricity, it can create oxygen. But when you get a lot of those black rocks together, that's going to create different wormholes. And this is what the black rock is really about. And this is what's underneath over in Saudi Arabia, underneath Iran, old ancient civilizations that were using that black rock. The satanic part of that black rock that people use, there's a bad side to it. It's connected to what people call Saturday. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Saturday was actually named after Saturn, because the cabal, the dark forces, they really use Saturn. They consider that a satanic temple. There's a black cube that's on top of Saturn. There's a civilization there that's underneath Saturn, and they communicate with that. So there's a lot more stuff to talk about. Communications from Antarctica, connected to blue ice, connected to so many stuff. And so that's a huge story I just told you, that comes from a lot of different sources, from intelligence, scientists, from declassified stuff, classified stuff, a lot of stuff that's really behind the scenes, even from the military. So it's huge. And now we're going to talk about the rapture, how people believe that the Christians and then the dead Christians, that God's going to come down and collect everybody and take them up to heaven. And then everybody else will die inside of the end of the world stuff. It's, you can't think about it like that, because there are so many different religions, sacred religions of indigenous people, indigenous tribes, even the spirit of animals, even them, they have this powerful spirit. When they die, they go into different lifetimes. They can shapeshift. There's also a power inside the sacred energy of animals, even plants, even things that you won't even consider. They're actually living. They're actually alive. There's a vibration that's vibrating inside of them. A plant gives you food. It gives you life. There's a lot of different sentient spirits, different sentient beings, even water, even different spirits that can't see, ghosts around you, aliens, extraterrestrials, interdimensions, beings, spirits. So there's a lot to talk about that. So when we talk about the rapture, that it's not only for Christians, even like I said, even for natives, it's a powerful moment after death where you go into your own forms of heavens, so shifting timelines, jumping timelines, the spirit goes into a different time, a different place. So that's what kind of the rapture is about, but expanding that term rapture to really look at it in a different way, to say that even there's super advanced technology from different dimensions where people can actually live forever. There's different aliens that live for thousands and thousands of years that travel through the cosmos. So when I'm telling you this story, we're talking about very advanced, even super technology of how Tesla was able to open up wormholes. Tesla was jumping timelines to help out people. There's so much powerful technology that you're not aware of. Even aliens creating things that look like humans, creating things that are clones, creating different sentient beings. There are stuff that even at this moment when I'm talking to you is being created in a different dimension that you cannot even imagine how that dimension looks. Not everything is how we see us here with 2 arms, 2 hands, 2 eyes that looks like a humanoid. There are other things that look like clouds, that look like vapors, that's just invisible, or else they're only colors that move. There's all these different magnificent dimensions. And Tesla, he was mimicking almost what the rapture can do. Tesla was coming out of his spirit, jumping into different timelines and all of this stuff. So that's the crazy stuff. I had already heard this a long time ago, and I was waiting. Now I kept hearing it coming when people were telling us. I was like, shoot, I knew about this a long time ago. In 2016, I had heard about this story with Snowden, what was going on in Russia, Tesla, what had really happened a long time ago, how it's going to be connected to Barron Trump, how all of this story of this very important person, this Lockwood, he's kind of giving you the comms, he's giving you a lot of information about a future, what's underneath Russia. He was talking about a future events of what's going to happen inside of the United States. He was giving you information about this civil event that we're in. He was giving you comms to say, look at who I am. Look at Abraham Lincoln sent me over to Germany for a reason. There's a reason why I'm writing these books, So when we talk about this stuff, Tesla, jumping timeline, very advanced technology of the 17 operations, that powerful QQ light that can move around different dimensions. These projects, these powerful operations and events, they're connected that go far back into the Bible. When people talk about, 2,000 years, 4,000 years ago, 30,000 years ago, people think of it as a different time that doesn't exist now. But still, people base their faith on that, their full religion on that. Whether you're in India, they base their religion that's based on thousands of years. The same with Christianity, it's based on thousands and thousands of years. The same with Native American cultures, it's based on thousands and thousands of years. But when we talk about it in the context to say that, well, there is technology, there are spirits, there are ghosts, there are extraterrestrials, there is the hand of God that can create so much things to connect us now into the past. And to say that there are things that can be changed in the past. So there's a lot of events that that's connected to time travel, that's connected to ultra extraterrestrials, and that's connected to who Tesla was. There's a lot of stuff you're not aware of, from Musk, to Abraham Lincoln, the shooting Was that all just staged, the whole thing? You have to look at everything in different forms of these military operations, very super advanced operations that's going to keep on blowing your mind, especially the stuff you're going to see with AI, technology, what Trump's going to do, what's going to happen, and then everything will eventually calm down, and then the technology is going to keep on coming out, keep on evolving, and it's going to go really, really quick. It's going to go really, really fast. What's going to happen? A beautiful roller coaster ride. There's so much stuff that's going to happen. And so that's why the government was telling you they have the power to bend space and time. There's a reason why Trump, his family is connected back to Germany where the old underground bases were, and why he named USSF the Guardians, because that's connected to the old protectors. So there's just so much stuff. There's a lot of things that are fascinating, and I want to bring you the story, so you have to look at this for what it is. You have to make up your own mind. I'm only giving you information about a lot of this stuff, and that connects to military operations that we didn't even know were happening. And a lot of these military operations are connected to a galactic military operations, to different spirits, different realms, different dimension, using wormholes. So a lot of this stuff I will tell in my native podcast that's going to be coming this week. I finally got everything ready. I want to drop my first episode, but I'm going to talk about a lot of these things that's connected to the spirit, how the spirit can come out, and how you train for that, connected to what Buddha was doing, different masters was doing. That's the real knowledge of what people call meditation. At the highest levels of meditation, masters know how to leave this body and jump out and jump into other timelines, to jump out and go into different dimensions that are sacred and holy, for different reasons, for healing, to bring that energy back, for teachings, to help other people understand a different reality than what they're experiencing, for faith, for hope. There's a lot of this stuff that's just really amazing. So I know I jumped around on this whole thing, especially towards the end, and I just hope you can find something inside of these stories, find something inside of this drop, find something inside of this, inside of these different sources on your own. And I just want to share that story with you guys because, man, we're going to go into a lot of stuff, especially what USSF, what Musk is creating. There's some private enterprises inside of the United States, what they're creating. And so everything's getting really, really interesting. So all of this connects back to the 17th letter of the alphabet. Operations from the future that kind of help Tesla through wormholes. And this goes all the way back into the people who created the Bible. You have John, you have the apostles, you have all these different people, you have Luke. But then you also have 40 other people who helped write the Bible. Over 1,500 years the Bible was written with 40 other people. So, but when you dig deep into a thing called the source, which is actually the 17th letter of the alphabet, that's called the Book of Q, that book, it kind of gives you a little bit of insight why that was suppressed, why the media never wants that to come out, why it's considered only conspiracy, and it connects back to biblical events of helping these people, the first Christian leaders, to gather the Bible, the books, and to kind of copy each other's work a little bit in a certain way. So I know people kind of disagree with this part of the story. So I just want to give you some context that's connected to you, the power of your own spirit, the power that is so magnificent, and to understand what life is really for. At the highest levels inside of your DNA, it's connected to the vibration of the earth, to the whole cosmos. you're a child of God. You're miraculous. There is divine energy. You're inside of this beautiful moment, the great awakening that's directly connected to your spirit, connected to this life, to see the miracles happen, even though it looks like sometimes things are really painful. Okay, guys. I'll see you guys.
No way. Nikola Tesla, therefore, according to this revelation, faked his death.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's
he faked his
crazy.
death. So he's still alive. Of course, he's probably about over 100 years old, but he's still alive.
Wow.
Time travel technology was developed by Nikola Tesla. And this is what I call the Triple Temporal Alliance. And what that means is that they are actually operating from the future, believe it or not, and they're also operating from the past. They actually time traveled 2,000 years ago to write a second book known as the Book of. In that book, in the tale of Baron being a time travel, the person who was assisting him, that came to visit him, to go to different time coordinates in the past and in the future to secure the positive timelines, he went by the name of Dawn. According to Commander Valiant Thor, who is a liaison between the human Earth White Hat team and the Galactic Alliance, it is believed that this mysterious figure that was actually not only the tutor of Baron Trump, but allowing him to go to different time coordinates, both in the future and in the past, was actually no other than Nikola Tesla. No way.
Join my Patreon paid membership group. It's practically buying us a premium cup of coffee every month just to get the intelligence reports, military reports, and what's really happening behind the scenes. So join New 17 paid membership, and we'll see you guys there, and look through all the library and get all the information years, months, and weeks in advance of what's really happening behind the scenes.